He recently assumed the reins as CEO of the UMB Bank, incidentally the same bank at which he began his career 2 decades ago. In between these two experiences is an interesting leadership journey that has taken him to different countries and different organizations. What are the lessons picked up along the way? And how can our young participants reposition themselves to enable them climb all the way to the top? It's time to find out. Springboard 2021 Roadshow. A huge round of applause as we welcome our keynote speaker for today, Nana Dwemoh Benneh.
To witness this repositioning, which is done in an almost outworldly environment. One that actually resonates with the theme, reimagining the future. It's been great to connect with Auntie Joyce again. It's always wonderful to hear her speak. And Reverend Albert and Comfort Ukran have outdone themselves again in the virtual world. A great applause to them. When I was asked to speak this morning, I spent some time thinking about what to say. Because you see, we live in very privileged times now. In our lifetime, the world has changed several times over. And things that we see today, we only dreamt about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, what we see in reality today were fairy tales that we read in books. But we have the privilege of living, of experiencing. How then do we take advantage of this new world which we find ourselves in? So today I will speak about 3 key lessons I have learned as I've gone through the world from the last 20 odd years, and how that has shaped my thinking in terms of the present and in terms of the future. The first thing I want to talk about is how we position ourselves in the world of work, in the world of corporate, and indeed in the world where we interact with other people. The big lesson I learned here is that it is not about me. It is actually about what the world appreciates about me and what the people around me appreciate about me. So to give you an example, I'll tell you about the year 2000. I was working as a management trainee, and I just got to myself a really cushy job to go and work with a director in Kenya. And I was full of myself and of my achievements, having been able to get this great thing. I was the envy of most of my friends. When I got there, he had a personal assistant who was onboarding me. One of the first things he told me was, please remember that your job is to make your boss happy. I found that was very strange. I had all these skills, and I was going to impress, to show them what I could do. Surely I could not be reduced to just making my boss happy. So during that week, I was still working on Cloud 9, buoyed up by my experiences. And then I made my first presentation to my boss. 30 minutes later, he came out of the office. There was red ink all over the paper that I had given to him. He had changed the formation of sentences, and a few punctuations I had forgotten he had corrected. My world plummeted. How is it that somebody so accomplished should be reduced to this level? It took me about a week to actually pull myself out of the doldrums, to understand that it was not about me. It was about the service I was offering and how he would appreciate that service. In time, I got to understand his style. I got to learn that my Achimota English did not quite meet his needs in Nairobi. And so I had to adapt my style to suit his needs. Thankfully, we built a wonderful working relationship, but I learned a very big lesson after that. The skills that I think are important to me may not necessarily be the skills that others appreciate or want. And in working, and in even dealing with clients, you do have to pay attention to what it is that they require from you. Many of us have many skills being gifted by the Lord in various ways. And sometimes we run the risk of appreciating some of them more because that is how we like to see ourselves. So, for example, you may be very good at coaching, encouraging, and motivating, but your headspace is stuck on the fact that you are very analytical. And that is the skill that you feel most proud about. But hey, reality check. The world is looking for you to inspire and to motivate them, not necessarily for your analytical skills. And so you must pay heed to what the world is telling you they appreciate about you. And that is the value of feedback. It's become a very cliched word, but feedback is extremely valuable for you to be able to not only look in the mirror, but also understand what is coming from the outside so that you can zero in on a skill that is truly marketable and make the impact that you want. So that you are not a mediocre analyst, but rather a great motivator, like Reverend Albert and Comfort Okran do on a daily basis. So learn to understand what the world values most about you and use that as your success tool to becoming what it is you want. Take it from me. From a former student who dreamed of becoming a doctor, later revised to becoming a pharmacist, and when the A-levels didn't show that quite, ended up doing economics and philosophy, which I enjoyed so immensely, and ended up in an unlikely place as a bank. You see, everything you do, every experience you make counts ultimately for something. You will be surprised how my philosophical skills have helped me in the boardrooms, sometimes to outwit Auntie Joyce, who sat in the boardroom with me on many occasions. So do not discount any experience you have. It all goes to repositioning you to make you relevant for every single opportunity you get to exploit it. The only thing I'll caution is that you must stand for certain things. And as Joyce said it, your integrity, your ethics may not be compromised, even in your quest of satisfying your client or satisfying your boss. But in so doing, I urge that you do that quietly and firmly. We live in a world where the more noise you make on social media, the more popular you are. But that does not give you the sustainability to be the kind of person you want to be in future. It is often good to state your case quietly and firmly and consistently so people associate you with a certain set of values. It will stand you in good stead. I'm reminded that Joseph, who was the husband of Mary, was described as a just man. But there's nowhere in the Bible where is recorded any word from Joseph. Even though we never hear him speak, he is still described as the just man. So sometimes you can still be described or defined without necessarily making a lot of noise that distracts from the value that you have. My second point, it is a continuous learning journey. And the destination is when life ends. I smile a lot when people say, we want you to talk about how you got to the top. Because for me, I do not recognize the top. What's that concept of the top? It is a journey. When we say how you got to the top, we see it like a destination. But it never ends. It is a continuous learning opportunity all the time. Last year, Reverend Albert and Comfort were climbing Afajato. And they will tell you that they needed certain skills to get there. But once they got there, they needed other skills. If they were going to stay there, you needed other skills to stay. If you had to come down, you need other skills to come down as well. And so the top is not really the end. And so in our positioning, we have to recognize that each level we get to is just another step in the lifelong journey we have. Once we think that way, it enables us to continually reposition ourselves and make ourselves relevant in a fast-changing world that we find ourselves in. Imagine the world we live in now. People can actually live in the UK and hold full-time jobs in Ghana. Very easy. Because of the COVID pandemic, people have designed new ways of doing business. I have friends in Okainshi, when during the lockdown, customers were not coming to their shops. had to buy cars and start delivery services to their clients. The world constantly changes. We cannot afford to convince ourselves that we have arrived at any point in time of our lives. Look at Jimmy Carter. He was the president of the United States, one of the most powerful countries in the world. But after he's done so much, these days, we even forget that he was the president of the United States, because his journey continued even after he got to where we thought was the top. And our own Auntie Joyce, Reverend Dr. Ai, is a shining example. I urge you to Google her up or check her Wikipedia status. And you see there are many tops that she has summited, because at each stage, it was a learning for another stage. Let us focus our lives not on a single journey, but on a series of journeys. And the series of journeys will ensure that we stay relevant at each point in time of our lives. We live in a world where we have machine learning, we have robotics. 2 years ago, I was in China and I ordered room service, and a robot delivered the room service to my door. During the pandemic in Rwanda, robots were nursing some patients. This is the new world that we live in. We now have automated assistants who offer services if customers want banking services and many other services that are going on. Each time I tell my colleagues that very soon, the very core cards that we are holding will be relevant. The jobs that we now hold so dear and we value so much will not exist anymore. And if that happens, what then do we do? Learning in itself has changed. Now it's not so formal. You do not need to sit in classrooms all the time. The time has come that whatever skill we have, we see it as temporary and work to build on other skills. Because the world as we know it, our educational system as we know it, was built for a certain world that does not exist anymore. And what is our response? In this new world, it is democratized. You can go to Harvard while you sit in Agbogbloshie, in the world that we are in now. So what are we waiting for? It cannot be that what we have is satisfactory to us. We need to strive in a world that has made it increasingly accessible for us to gain whatever it is we gain, so that our repositioning and our reimagining can become a reality, even as we assess what it is that we have done in the past. So we invest. We invest in new skills every day. And all of us have to do that. Nobody has arrived. My third point talks about survival. And survival in this world. You see, the world we live in is a far cry from the Eden that the Lord designed the world to be. And so daily, we are faced with a lot of stress, even as we continually develop, and even as our civilization continually moves faster and faster. We have to recognize that there is stress in the world. And in the past, it was a sign of weakness when you succumb to stress, or when you could not sort of move on anymore. In this world we are in, it is a sign of strength to admit that you need help. And many times when we speak to colleagues, to friends, to relatives, and to all other people in the world, we encounter people who are actually battling under the weight of the stress that our new modern world has brought us to us. The encouragement is that we have to own up to the stress and seek help. There's a lot of help out here now. There's a lot of help for mental health issues, psychological issues, and it's time not to sweep it under the carpet anymore. Because our very world that we live in now has made it a part of our lives. And therefore, being proactive to deal with it is a sign, or is a sure strategy to help us to move on in repositioning ourselves into the new world. It is part of our strategy, and therefore it must be part of our plan as well. In addition to that is the absolutely valuable resource of mentors. Seeking out mentors and seeking to be mentors to others as well. That dialogue that goes on through mentorship is an essential ingredient to growing, to developing, to taking advantage, and to making sure we thrive in this new world that we find ourselves in. I've been blessed with many, many mentors. And a number of them have been very tough with me. Some of them have publicly castigated me in changing some of my habits. And these people have been invaluable in my journey, or my continuous journey. An example is when I was actually taking down several robes when I walked in 5 minutes late into my mentor's meeting. And in a crowd with various people from various parts of the world, I was made to feel very small. But the end result is, I'm never late, if I can help it. I think these days we are a bit too sensitive. I think that these days we take offense too easily, and we miss out the massive opportunity that failure and mentorship and correction brings into our lives. If there is one value that I think we need to adopt as we reposition ourselves for the future, is learning to put aside our feelings and taking the lesson that comes from some of these uncomfortable situations. For unless a seed first dies, it cannot grow into a tree. A word to the wise, they say, is somewhere in this room and all over the virtual world. Find yourself an anchor in life. I have been privileged to work in a number of world-renowned institutions, and I have been privileged to see people who lead such big organizations from a distance. The one thing I've increasingly learned is that as the responsibilities increase, so does the acknowledgement that there is a being somewhere who is much greater than we all are, who actually controls what we do. And the more responsibility you gain, the more you get to acknowledge that. So find that being in your life, whatever you conceive him to be. As for me, I know that I go to my Lord through Jesus Christ, and that has been a sure anchor in my life. And when things get really tough and uncomfortable, somehow he sees me through. Very much like sitting in a four-wheel drive on a very flooded road. You see the waves of water rolling all about. But somehow you are comforted because you are a bit insulated. You are slightly higher than where the turbulence is at its most. Therefore, you gain that strength to survive. So in this world, I will encourage you and urge you, seek that anchor. It is a very turbulent world we live in. Many things are happening. And the more you gain your responsibility, the more complicated it will become. The more complex you have to face. The more issues that will be thrown at you. The more you will feel like giving up. But in my experience, once you have that anchor, it works. And in the end, you are able to move forward. I would like to end with one poem that has become one of my favorite poems for a very long time. When I finished O-level many years ago, my father thought that I needed not to spend the time wandering around and just causing mischief. So he sent me to work in a, well, not work, but sent me to get some experience in a computer data center in the University of Ghana. And there I met a lady, Mrs. Agatha Nketia, and on her wall was this poem. And it had such an impact on me and continues to have an impact on me. I find that this is very, very relevant in these discussions that we are having today. And so, with your kind permission, I will share it with you. And I urge you to also look for some of these inspirational quotes, inspirational words, inspirational books, as Benuma just showed us earlier, which keep you going. Your mind needs to be refreshed, I find, so that you are able to tackle more and more things as you go ahead. So here goes. The poem is the Desiderata. Some of you may have seen it before. Every day I read it. Every day I am inspired. And I hope that you will be as well. Go placidly amid the noise and the haste, and remember what peace that there may be in silence. As far as possible, without surrender, be on good terms with all persons. Speak your truth quietly and clearly, and listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant, for they too have their story. Avoid loud and aggressive persons. They are vexations to the spirit. If you compare yourself with others, you may become vain or bitter, for always there will be greater and lesser people than yourself. Enjoy your achievements as well as your plans. Keep interested in your own career, however humble. It is a real possession in the changing fortunes of time. Exercise caution in your business affairs, for the world is full of trickery. But let this not blind you to what virtue there is. Every person strives for high ideals, and everywhere life is full of heroism. Be yourself, especially do not feign affection, neither be cynical about love, for it, in the face of all aridity and disenchantment, it is as perennial as the grass. Take kindly to the counsel of the years, gracefully surrendering the things of the youth. Nurture strength of spirit to shield you in sudden misfortune. But do not distress yourself with dark imaginings. Many fears are born out of fatigue and loneliness. Beyond the wholesome discipline, be gentle with yourself. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. And whether or not it is clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding as it should. Therefore, be at peace with God, whoever you conceive him to be, and whatever your labors and aspirations. In the confusion of life, keep peace with your soul. With all its sham drudgery and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world, and therefore be cheerful. Strive to be happy. Thank you very much.